BREWtally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is the returning Traivs Miguel of Atreyu and Fake Figures. Atreyu have an upcoming album, the Pronoia Sessions, I believe I'm saying that correctly, coming out November 8th via Spine Farm Records. We talk a little bit about that, but before we get into anything to do with this episode, I actually want to go back, speaking of not being sure if I said something correctly. I want to make an amend to last week's episode with Alan Robert, not Robert Allen. I kind of did an Instagram live thing right before I started recording this, essentially explaining what happened. For those that don't know, I always write out all the show notes and everything. Like literally the episode that I'm doing right now with Travis, I have a little list of like the album title, when it's coming out. I have like the next guest, so when I do the outro, you know, I know who is coming up. I have all of the stuff basically in the show notes below. That's all in there, so when I'm reading it all off, I can kind of read it. I made a note even to not say Robert Allen. It's Alan Robert, and then basically made a note of like why I made that note, if I made a mistake, and basically saying, you know, I went to school with a kid. We called him Bobby Allen, Allen, but his name was Robert Allen. And was a thing where I was stuck on that. I made a note to make sure that I didn't make that mistake. I know I caught it a couple of times when I would do it, and as I said in the Instagram video, I'll try to keep it short. Essentially, when I make a mistake, even when recording this, I've done probably 6 versions of this intro because I don't like to edit them. I don't like to try to punch in and correct something because it just sounds weird. You can tell that it's been edited. So I try to do these as one shot as possible. So every time I made the mistake during the Alan Robert episode, I would stop it, start all over, redo the thing. I thought I had caught it, but clearly I didn't. I know Dewey from Pure Pleasure reached out to me last night as I'm recording this to basically say that I had made the mistake. So I wanted to apologize to Alan and all the Life of Agony fans and band and everything for the simple egregious mistake that I made. But owning up to it, hopefully that mistake didn't really take you too far out of the conversation itself and the breadth of the conversation with Alan, but wanted to address that right out the gate. I already did on my socials and so forth, but if you're listening to this now and haven't heard anything and thought to yourself last week, like, oh, he kept fucking that up. Well, I did. I thought I fixed it. I thought I corrected it. Obviously, I did not. So wanted to apologize and make sure I do not do that. But I guess silver lining, if there is one, in the 8 years or so of doing this show, I haven't made that mistake, as far as I know, anywhere else. So just got to be better than the day before. So, and I think, honestly, that's kind of a sentiment sort of running through with what Atreyu's been doing. I feel like they are just constantly trying to be better than they were before, whatever that looks like for the members individually. And I think, like, for Travis, I want to joke and be like, it's eating, you know, pastries and so forth, and making fun, you know, all over graphic t-shirts and tank tops and so forth to wear on stage. But I think the band, what they've been doing, and not throwing shade or anything, but what they've done essentially post Alex not being in the band, I feel like the band has just been really laser focused on writing songs stepping outside of their comfort zone of maybe of doing something different. And I honestly think that this kind of reimagining of some of their greatest hits is a really interesting thing. I mean, looking at like Becoming the Bull and hearing it kind of stripped down and reimagined. And the thing that I keep coming back to when I listen to this version of these songs, and even if I go back and listen to the original versions of these songs over the decades now long career they've had, is it always comes back to a feeling and what does it make you feel? And I feel like this band has always done a great job of essentially making you feel something. I mean, I know for me when I listen to the Curse album, and that's sort of a whatever topic in the Atreyu fandom, but, you know, I have a lot of memories with a lot of people on that record cycle, seeing the band several times on that album cycle. And when I listen to that record, it's sort of a lot of, I would say, introspection to how I felt about past relationships I was in, as well as a relationship that I don't really have, but reconciling my relationship with my brother who passed away before I even knew him. So there's a lot in there. And I think as the band progressed and got older, and so did I, there's a lot of things that in all of it, there's sort of the introspection of the lyrics, but there's also always this sense kind of hope and positivity. And I think even when you strip these songs down, the songs that maybe you liked because they were loud and bombastic and like all these things, maybe now when everything's kind of stripped away and you're focused more on the message contained within these songs, I think maybe you'll take something a little bit differently out of them now than you would have previously in the different iterations of the songs that existed. But above all, just goes to show that the band knows how to write great songs, even reimagining their songs where it's like the work was already done. We know this chorus works. We know these chords work. We know these structures work. But to kind of deconstruct and rebuild, I think is really interesting. And honestly, I think as we all get older, I think that's something we all are doing. I think we're all kind of constantly deconstructing and reconstructing to be the best versions of ourselves that we can present. Speaking of presenting, let's get into my conversation with Travis, and I'll see you all on the other side of it. Yeah, I've been trying to enjoy it, but I'm also just like it's really weird. Like, it makes you think because, you know, I have an elementary school literally across the street from where I live. And so school's about to start, I think this next week, I think school gets back in. And I was like, fuck, it seems like summer break goes a lot faster than I feel like it used to as a kid. So now I've kind of been thinking about it from the perspective, I was like, you know, everyone's like, oh, it'd be nice to have a summer break or whatever, but it's like, I feel like that's what I have, but I can't do anything. So it doesn't feel like a break of anything. It just feels like the only thing I can do is things I would like to do. But when that's all you can do, you're like, this sucks. And I wish I could do anything but this.
Yeah, I feel you. Like sitting around and doing absolutely nothing for a little while always sounds good, but then there's only so much of that you can take before you start going stir crazy.
Yeah, I think my wife's been a lot better with helping me kind of realize that. Like, it's been funny because this week I've had a podcast every day, essentially. So it's been kind of nice because that gives me something to kind of like look forward to, know that I'm going to have some social interaction with somebody. And then, you know, kind of go back to sitting. But it's kind of funny. Like, it's so weird. Like, you know, I know this sounds so obvious, but I don't think you realize it until like you're in a sort of position like this where you're just like, fuck, man. Like, just even the ability to get up and go do something. Like, just if I wanted to leave the house and be like, oh, I'm going to go do this, it's a little bit more of a process now. Like, I have to essentially have my wife get like back up the car, have it ready, steer near me. So like when I'm switching from my knee scooter to the crutches to get out of the house, it's like, it's a bit of a process. And like, it's still, I'm getting faster and better at it, but it's still like, it's hard to, do. So it kind of takes a little bit out of you. So you're just kind of like, man, just little things I've come to really appreciate. Like even like today, like I showered, and we have like a nice little chair that I sit in and stuff like that because I can't stand. And so it's just one of those things where it's like I remember, I think 2 or 3 days after surgery, I had like my first shower, and it was a process to get in because just a couple of days after surgery. And I remember just like almost crying sitting in the shower because I was like, oh my God, this is the first I've felt like a fucking normal person in like 3 days. Like doing something where I'm kind of alone, but I'm not because I have to like, call my wife and be like, okay, I'm done. Like get the towels and shit ready for me. But like just sitting in there, I was like, I'm doing a normal thing of like my normal day to day. And like it felt like a little piece of normalcy came back. And it's just really weird that it's like having those moments where you're just like, oh, it is kind of tough when you have to rely on other people and like don't have that. Like I was almost wondering too, like I feel like potentially that's probably how you guys got to feel coming home from tour, because it's like you kind of have everyone doing things for you, telling you where you need to be and when, and then all you want to do is get away from everyone and just kind of be doing your own thing. And then you get home, and I feel like it's probably like, this is great until maybe a week or so later, and then you're probably all like, all right, I'm ready to go back on the road now.
Yeah, you pretty much hit the nail right on the head. After about 4 or 5 weeks of being on tour, you're kind of like, I wouldn't mind sleeping in my own bed tonight, or just sitting in front of the TV, or getting to use my own toilet, or just sit around and do nothing. But then, yeah, exactly like you said, after a while, it's like I don't know what to do with myself, because on tour you have pretty much a regimented schedule every day. You wake up, maybe get some coffee, check the day sheet, see what time load in is, whatever press you may have, and all that stuff. And you get so used to it, and then when you get home, you're like, like I said, I have no idea what to do with myself. It's all up to me. So, but yeah, I just try to stay somewhat productive and busy
As probably, well, I don't know, I guess maybe kind of all of you, other than Brandon, I guess, really. I was going to say, you're all kind of not super active on socials unless you're on tour and kind of sharing all the, the day in recap of like the night before and so forth. But I was going to say, I guess kind of collectively, you, Porter, and Dan don't really share a whole lot of when you're home necessarily. So what do you do when you're at home?
It's a good question. I don't know. It just kind of depends. Like even at home, sometimes I'm super busy and like I barely have time to even, I have to like literally remind myself to eat, because I don't even think about it because I'm so busy. Or it's the complete opposite, where I've got too much time on my hands, and idle hands. That's for me. That's too much of that is not a good thing. But yeah, I mean, I try to keep somewhat of a regular daily routine. More often than not, I'll go to the gym. So that, kills an hour or two of my day, or, playing guitar, stuff like that. But nothing too like out of the ordinary, really. It's pretty boring in my old age.
Just reminded of Anchorman. It's very boring. But it's what I love.
It is.
It is. Well, because I was going to say, like, I saw it popped up in my feed when I logged into YouTube the other day to start putting up the episode that I'm putting up this week. And it was you and Dan, I think it was through Loudwire, maybe Rockfeed or something like that, where you guys were writing or sharing your favorite riffs. Oh, and it seemed like that was done in your house, based on sort of, I could hear cats in the background. I don't think Dan's got cats, but I know you do, because I can see it in the background.
That was at a friend of mine's place, because he actually has a legit camera.
Okay,
So
because I was gonna say, here's the other thing. That's now the second time I've said like, "Where is this in your house?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm at my friend's house recording these things."
yeah, it's at the same spot. Yeah, in my house, it's pretty boring. So yeah, we shot that a couple, was it last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that. So yeah, I mean, that gave me something to do for about an hour out of my very non-busy day.
It's always funny watching those clips because it's like when the other person's talking, like it's like it almost seems like all either of you are thinking about is like, okay, what do I have to play next? Like, what is the next thing I have to do? Like that I was gonna play, and like, am I gonna forget it? Because like even I think during your thing where you were like, yeah, you know, the Metallica thing, you're like, I mean, I don't know, I guess it's something like that. I don't know. I should have practiced more.
Yeah, we didn't really come in prepared for that, or not as prepared as we should have been. But then again, that's Atreyu. That's just how we roll.
But it's kind of funny because like when watching something like that, it almost felt like how I feel like when I'm trying to learn something, I'm like, oh, it doesn't quite sound right, or I flubbed that up quite a bit. I was like, eh. But then it's like when you play your own shit, it's just like, oh, this is like the back of my hand. I know how to do this real easy. And then it was just kind of funny to watch how like mindless it became for you to play your own shit.
Yeah, just fake it till you make it. I mean, I've been doing that for over 20 years now, and it's been working out pretty well.
Is it still like? Is it still weird? Because I would feel like in my head, I guess unless you're like you're Yingwei, like where you just feel like you're the shit and you know you are, and no one's ever going to be better than you. But I feel like it'd always be this thing where you're like, I don't even deserve to have my own signature guitar. Why would someone let me have one? Like this, like imposter syndrome of like,
yeah, imposter syndrome is real. I mean, I've had numerous signature models with a couple of different companies, and if you told the 16 or 17-year-old me that would actually happen, I would have laughed in your face. But here I am. I've got some signature models of Balaguer guitars, and yeah, on that end, I can't complain whatsoever.
I was just saying to someone the other day, actually it was Dewey, I think, that I was saying like it'd be kind of nice if like the Balagers like seem like really good guitars, but it's not like you'll see them in a shop somewhere. So it's kind of like one of those you're like, I think I'd like to play one, but I don't want to spend a couple $1,000s and find out I don't. It'd be nice just to be able to go in somewhere.
Yeah, I've actually been like overseas and walked into a few guitar shops, and there have been Balaguer guitars in there. But yeah, I was kind of surprised too, because they're kind of like a not ground level, but like a more I guess
boutique. Like boutique kind of. Yeah.
I mean, most of their stuff, it's custom made. A lot of guitar companies are going that route. The more, the smaller, more, I guess, like for lack of a better term, like if you want to compare it to like an indie band or something, they're kind of like an indie guitar company. They're not as big as the Ibanez's or the Fenders or ESP or stuff like that. But that's kind of what drew me to them to begin with. Being a small fish in a huge pond is awesome, in the fact that, as a kid, you always dream of being able to play these high-end guitars or play the same guitars that your heroes played. But I can't compete with James Hetfield. Like, there's no way. So yeah, going, the more like smaller grassroots company is definitely enticing to me, definitely attractive. So, and like if I need to get a hold of somebody at Balaguer, I can literally just send a text to Joe Balaguer himself, and he'll get back to me, very quickly. So, whereas with the bigger companies, you have to go through their A&R dude who's got to send an email out to so-and-so, and then you got to wait for another 3 or 4 days to even get a response back, if you get a response back. But that's just the way that whole world works,
Yeah, I think for me, something that was kind of interesting to see right away, and I almost feel like this is the same kind of thing that kind of makes me like look at labels, like when you get to a bigger label, it's sort of the diversity of what's on there, that it's not all just the same thing. So I mean, it's like between, I think at one point it was like you, Devin from Acacia Strain, Andy from Exetid, and a few others that I'm kind of blanking on now. But it was like none of those bands are the same. None of the styles that those, like the three of you are, so none of you played the same way. But the fact that you're all able to kind of find some common ground with the guitar itself, the company, kind of was like, okay, like it seems like they would be a very good company to explore with, like, you know, being someone as a player myself, that it's like I like metal, but I also like these things and different types of tones and textures and so forth. So like maybe seeing a wide array of artists like that play those different styles, granted you're not all playing the exact same instrument, but it would seem like the versatility that I would get out of one of the instruments would probably allow me to play a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that was definitely a selling point for me, was the fact that Balaguer, the actual guitars they make themselves. I mean, if you look at all of their guitars, there's something for everybody. You know, whether you're into, you know, just standard blues rock, or if you're into like, I don't like death metal, or like punk, whatever it may be, there's something there for you. They've got super pointy headstocks. They've got more like, you know, classic body shapes, but also like, again, like super gnarly like metal shapes too. So yeah, that's always been a selling point for me as far as guitar companies, is if they're very, like you said, versatile. Something for everybody. So yeah, it covers all grounds.
What is the like, because I mean, I feel like I kind of notice what you're looking for when you've done your signatures, and it's always the same color scheme roughly. But what is it when you are given the option within reason, whatever you want? How did you come to pick what you have decided over the last, you know, the two different companies that you've had signature guitars through?
So far, it's been like the current signature models that I have now with Balaguer, is everybody uses the term classy, which is kind of my steez, I guess. I mean, I love, I know, right? Who'd have thought? Totally forgot what I was going to say.
I don't know. Repeat steez one more time for us, though, please.
Okay, boomer. Yeah, it's just been like the classy aesthetic. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love super gnarly, you know, guitars that look like they're a weapon. You know, I love old, beat up pieces of shit. I love brand new spanking guitars, you know, totally pristine. So with me, it's, especially coming up with a signature model, like I agonize over every single little thing, to the point where I have to like, well, nowadays on a lot of the guitar websites, they have like an online configurator where you can literally put your guitar together and see it, how it would, for the most part, how it would come to fruition. But yeah, like I said, I agonize over it, and, you know, well, if I do this, then that'll change this, or does that look cool? Does that not look cool? Or maybe I should do it. Oh God, I wish I could just be like, throw something together and be perfectly fine with it. But then again, it's, you know, it's a signature model, so you want to get it right. You know, you don't want to get something
right.
back. I totally screwed that up, but too late now. So, yeah, having a signature model, or coming up with a signature model, it's a lot of fun, but for me, it's very exhausting at the same time.
Well, it was because that was kind of the interesting thing to me, and you know, hate to bring up the old company that you both were using, but because it was kind of interesting, because it's like Dan, you know, for a while was just using the Explorer style. So when he made his own, and it was an Explorer style, like that just seemed to make sense. You using the Vipers, and then yours is basically just a Viper. as kind of the starting base of everything. It's like, okay, that makes sense because it's what we've seen you both play in the stock models, essentially. So a signature version that is essentially what we've already gotten familiar with you playing makes a lot of sense. The transition wasn't so weird to be like, oh, I wouldn't have seen that. And I'll say Dan's kind of kept that with the Kiesel, like where it's still kind of the Explorer kind of shapes and so forth. But I feel like yours kind of went from more of like, it almost from more of like the SG style body shape. It almost kind of has like more of a rounded, like from what I can remember when I see it, it almost feels sort of kind of like a really rounded Explorer kind of body. Like it's a little bit wider than I'm used to seeing with you. So it was just kind of interesting to see when you guys switched, like how you kind of changed your body shape a little bit more than I think I would have expected.
Yeah, that guitar in particular was just a one-off that Balaguer made for me. And I put them through the ringer because it's in a Antigua finish, which isn't a super common color. You see them, but you know, it's not like you go into every guitar store and you know there's a ton of Antigua finish guitars. I've just always loved that that particular finish. People seem to either love it or hate it. I personally love it, and that body style, which is kind of like, you know, like you said, a more rounded off Explorer, almost like a Gibson RD, almost.
I was trying to think.
Go ahead.
God, what were those one guitar called? There is a guitar shape that I'm thinking of that like, and it was Gibson. I just can't remember what they were fucking called.
There's a Firebird, there's the Explorer, there's
Firebird. That's what I'm thinking of. The Firebird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just always love that body shape, and actually the guitar that first caught my eye from Balaguer was the Hyperion, which is that body shape that I was talking about, the kind of like Gibson RD-ish thing. And I just figured, you know, I've been wanting that guitar, that body shape forever. And I've also wanted an Antigua finish guitar. So just to make myself happy and on principle, can you guys make this for me? And while you're at it, throw in a sustainer, which evidently is a nightmare to wire up. So yeah, I put them through their paces. So I applaud them for putting up with me and my ridiculous requests.
It's got to be one of those things though too, where I mean, I can't remember if we had talked about this the last time we were chatting, or if this is like a me being drunk, hanging out with the rest of your band, and then kind of punishing you in a random corner somewhere. But I was gonna say, like, I feel like, you know, you've been around long enough and probably have inspired people to pick up an instrument and or want to play. Is it weird for you when people come to you with like your own guitar to sign? Because I feel like it'd be a thing where part of me would be like, yeah, it's cool that you bought this, but I actually want you to play it, not just for it to be a keepsake that sits on a wall. Like, I feel like that's sort of the downfall of having signature guitars is like most people probably aren't going to play them. Not like an everyday use kind of guitar, I feel like.
Well, I mean, whatever they do with the guitar, I mean, that's out of my hands. So if they just want to, you know, hang it up on the wall and kind of showcase it as a, you know, art piece for their house or whatever, or if they want to, you know, play shows with it or smash it to pieces, like it's, you know, that's, like I said, it's out of my hands, so they can do whatever they want. But yeah, just to see somebody else playing my guitar is very surreal. Like, because I never do anything thinking that, oh, everybody's going to love this. Like, how could they not? I usually assume the opposite. So yeah, I mean, just seeing people out in the wild with the guitar that I kind of created is definitely a trip, you know. But at the same time, it's really cool too, you know, to like somebody liked that thing that came from my brain so much that they went out and got one. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's one thing that I wouldn't say it's a bucket list thing, but it's a really cool thing that I never thought would ever happen.
I always think it's interesting when bands get to that level, and I always think of a joke from a DVD that came out where someone was bitching when they were having to film something for Guitar World. And they're like, it was Jordan or Andy that were just like, oh, bro's just fucking mad Vocal World didn't call him or something like that. That it's like you don't as a musician kind of always get those accolades individually, like where it's like, guitar players getting their signature guitars, drummers, it's like I don't think you can have a whole kit that's uniquely yours. It's like a signature kit. I think you get like a cymbal and a snare and maybe like those things. I'm sure someone's probably like, you're fucking wrong, you actually can have a full signature set. But it's just one of those things I feel like it's got to be, I don't know, it's just I've been thinking a lot about it because I've been playing like cheap plug, but it's like I bought a stack of Stringjoy strings because like I had heard so much good about them, and I've been playing Diodario for like fucking 15 years or more, and like nothing topped those to me. I tried something else and just didn't like it, and then someone was like, you should try these, I think you would like them. So I tried them on my one guitar. I was like, all right, these are really fucking good. Like, so then I bought a stack for like all the rest of mine. So it's weird that it's like in recent times now I'm kind of like, okay, newer gear seems kind of interesting. I kind of want to try something else just to see what's out there. But it's like the tired and true of doing something for so long. It's kind of what you become known for and what you do. So it's kind of interesting to just sort of kind of buck those expectations and ideas. And I think even as a band, I think you guys have really done a good job of doing that. And this is a really terrible segue of doing that over the last bit since, the lineup change and so forth. I feel like you guys are just out to do whatever you would like to do in the moment that makes you feel something. And then, we're getting just this slew of material coming out. Like, I think we're about a month removed. Oh no, it comes out October 25th. Sorry. I thought it was September 25th that this new reimagined album of sorts is coming out, that it's like, now you're at the point where you have so much material, you're going back through and going, let's redo it. Let's do it a different way. And I feel like that's just kind of fun to think about how you can be so tied to something for so long, and then it just becomes like, let's just start changing that. Let's kind of get out of our own way and kind of experiment and see what happens. And I think that from someone that's been a fan of your band as long as it almost from the beginning, it's kind of crazy to see how it feels like you're hitting almost like a quote unquote third stride at this point, a third wind that's kind of catapulting you guys to a whole new audience and demographics and so forth.
Yeah, to have, like you said, a third wind, or like I don't know if you want to call it like a new lease on life, but it's pretty amazing and very gratifying as a band to have that lifespan. I mean, most bands don't even get a first wind, let alone a second. And, we're on our third, fourth, fifth, I don't know what wind we're on, but yeah, I mean, for me, the fact that we've been doing this for over 20 years now is amazing. When we first started, I figured we would go record a record, tour on it for a while, and then most likely just go back to school or go back to work and then continue on with our lives. But I mean, because most of the bands that we grew up listening to, that was their trajectory, because a lot of, punk and hardcore and metal, it was considered a very much an underground form of music. And there wasn't a whole lot of money to be made. But here we are 20 plus years later. It's pretty astounding to me, because most of the bands that we came up touring with in the very, very beginning are long gone and have been long gone for a while. So yeah, I mean, and as of, for right now, longevity for me is probably the coolest thing about this whole thing. The fact that we can still do this at the level that we're at. I mean, world domination would be pretty cool, but whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know. But just the fact that, like I said, the fact that we still get to do this and we all still love doing it, I can think of way worse jobs to have. So no complaints.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. It's funny because today when I logged into Facebook for a minute to look for socials for upcoming episodes that I need to put out, I keep getting the sponsored ad for the Curse record that you guys are repressing, I think for like one of the first times I think since it came out, that it's being repressed. But it's weird because the advertisement on it, or I should say the caption for it, is our biggest selling or something like that album. And I was like, is it though? Because I feel like if you look at all the DSPs, like there's like it's all the new stuff. So it's interesting to see the phrasing, and I could see it being done for one or two reasons where, there's the vocal minority that's very loud, that basically will tell you, if you believe it, that the Curse is the best thing you've ever done. It's the record they still listen to every single day. It's never gotten better from there. And so in that capacity, and if you were to go back to that point in your careers, I'm sure that was a pretty big step up for you from Suicide Notes and the touring cycles that you had done on that album. But I would say the reality of it on every other metric that I can see is, if you look at your DSPs, none of those songs are on there, not even in the top 10. If you go watch your live show in the last, I'll say at least 2 album cycles, other than Right Side of the Bed, I don't think you play anything off of it anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And it becomes this thing where it's like, by all accounts, from the real world things that you would look at to determine like how big of a record is it for you, doesn't seem like it is. So it was really interesting to see that somebody in the process of advertising that was like, our biggest selling record. And I was like, I don't think it is. I think you're just kind of trying to cater to the people that love that record so much to be like, fuck yeah, it was, and I'm buying another one.
Hey, whatever gets them in the stores, or whatever gets them online to buy it. Yeah, I mean, that record was a huge pivotal point for us. That was, like you said, a huge leap forward in our pretty much all around, like the songwriting, I think, was getting better. We were definitely becoming more popular. I remember we did a CD release signing at a Virgin Megastore here in Orange County. This is obviously when there were actual record stores. And I remember driving up to it, and there was like a huge line, like pretty much going around the whole store. And I thought somebody else got booked to do a signing as well. So I was like, oh, I wonder who else. And, lo and behold, it was for us. And I think that was the first sign of me realizing that, okay, I think we've, as a band, we've got something here, and then once that record was released, the shows were getting bigger, the tours were getting bigger. It was very much a whirlwind for us, because the record before that, I mean, obviously nobody knew who the hell we were. And, some people were discovering us on that first record. And then once the Curse was released, it was like all those people who already knew about us were telling all their friends, and then so on and so on and so on. So now, is it our biggest selling record? I have no idea. I'm not the type of dude that pays attention to analytics and numbers and stuff like that. I leave all that to Dan, because he loves numbers and loves to see like which song is streaming the most and stuff like that. So but either way, it definitely was a huge record for us.
It's funny, I remember talking with Ken Susi, now of Esley Dying, and at one point I'd asked him before he had kind of officially left on Earth, and I was like, do you feel like there's a spot in your career where you can kind of pinpoint, in the day and ages of where everyone would love to tell you, oh, if this thing would have happened, and some people can talk about their careers objectively down to if we weren't fucked on this album release, or we had a bigger budget, or whatever, everyone can kind of pinpoint a part in their career where they feel like it started going south or started kind of going more in a positive sense. And I remembered at the time kind of going, do you feel like there was a tour, like one tour you took that basically, if you would have taken it or if you would have not taken it, it would have helped your career be bigger for however long? And he goes, 100%. It would have been us not taking another Slayer tour and us doing Taste of Chaos, because look at the two bands out of our scene that did, between basically or three, I guess technically, Esley Dying, Killswitch, and you guys, that it's like you guys all then the next records did really well. You kind of crossed over into more of a quote unquote mainstream demographic now, where you're getting on some of these bigger look tours. And now you're the heaviest band on those tours, so you stick out even more in a positive way, because it's always better to kind of be the more heavier band against not, because it sticks out, versus being, a heavy band on all heavy lineup where you're like, we just sound the same compared to everybody else. So it was interesting to kind of hear that, because I know, those three, like the two bands that I mentioned and you guys, were a part of kind of that, where you kind of got out of the Ozfest, the Warped Tours, and kind of did something a little bit different. And it seems like it obviously gave you a different trajectory than everybody else. But I don't know if it's something that from the inside you could feel that is a tour that kind of did that for you back then, or if it just felt like any other show around that same time, where it's just the landscape was changing as a whole.
We've always been a band that was, we were very good at straddling the line. I think it was 2004. We toured with Taking Back Sunday. And that same year we toured we did the Ozfest, which was like Lamb of God, Hatebreed, Slipknot, Unearth, Throwdown, Bleeding Through. I don't know. We've just always been able to do that for whatever reason, and it definitely served us well. I remember, playing that Taking Back Sunday tour. Like, we were just scaring all the little girls in front, and then when we were like opening for Lamb of God, like the whole front row was just giving us middle fingers because none of us had long hair. So, but yeah, I mean, it's always good to obviously play in front of new faces, and not sticking to the same types of tours over and over again. Because if you do that, you're kind of just spinning your wheels, because you're just playing to the same people over and over and over again. So we definitely made it a point to kind of branch out and, go off the beaten path for a heavier band like ourselves. And at the same time, it makes it interesting for us too. If we're playing like an exclusively metal centric crowd or whatever, it's not going to take, or I should say or let me backtrack. If we're playing to, like, I don't know, screamo pop punk crowd, they might not know who we are. And, that's a chance for them to discover a new band. Whereas, if you're playing with a bunch of bands that sound exactly like you, then, you're kind of just preaching to the choir. So yeah, I mean, it's always good to just kind of get out of your comfort zone as a band. At least I think some bands can stay in their lane and always stay in their lane, and they thrive. I mean, like Slayer is like the perfect example. They've always been what they are, and they've never strayed too far left or right. And they were one of the most legendary metal bands ever. But we're just not that band. It makes it more interesting for us to play to new people, see new crowds. It kind of lights another fire in our bellies to, like, okay, these people have no idea who we are. Let's show them. We got to win this crowd over. So, yeah, like I said, just getting out of your comfort zone, trying new things, like things that might not work on paper, sometimes are the best are the best things to happen,
Well, I would almost imagine too, you're in a unique position, all these years later now, where depending on the crowd and depending on what people know, it's like you could, in theory, dip into more aggressive, heavier stuff that you have in your back catalog that people probably maybe don't know that you sound like that. Like it's kind of funny. I was reminded recently, a friend of mine was because went to go see the Misery Signals farewell show in Chicago about a month ago, and one of the guys that's now in For the Fallen Dreams is in the band of Virtue, Damon. And it's funny because he was talking somewhat recently about the process of his drummer in a Virtue. He's only known the band to sound the way that they do in the last like 5 or 6 years or so, or a little bit closer to that. And so when he was kind of talking about, his love of some of these other bands, he's like, "Oh, you haven't heard what our band used to sound like. Here, check this out." And he was saying like our drummer was just so blown away that we played something very similar to like Misery Signal style sound, like, really progressive kind of, an aggressive sound versus more polished and pop sounding now, like a lot of like Octane radio has become. And so it was just kind of funny because it's like, I'm sure if people like if they were to go out and be quote unquote the lighter band on the bill, but then dump into one of those old songs, people would be like, "Yo, what the fuck was that?" And then be like, "Yeah, we get to impress you. Like you don't know that we have these songs because you just assume we're what you only know of right now. But we can dip in and play some of these old songs that we just haven't in a while, knowing that we have to kind of try to win you over and maybe like playing one of our more aggressive sets or playing a more leaner and aggressive set is going to win you over when you think you're just going to get, blow, for lack of a better term. Like maybe someone just knows that one song from a video game or something and they're like, "Oh, I fucking hate that band because that song sucks," not knowing that there's heavier songs or whatever. And then they might walk away going, "Oh, I thought you were totally this and you're not." So it'd be interesting to kind of see that from your perspective, where it's like someone might be like, "Spin sucks, and you get a lot of this, and then all of a sudden maybe they play something, you're like, you see that switch happening where they're like, "Yeah, this rules. This is pretty cool. I like this," and you're like, "Got you, motherfucker."
Yeah, I mean, I've come across people who, their entry point to Atreyu was, one of our later records. Like, I guess a prime example would be our Lead Sails Paper Anchor record. There was I don't want to say dramatic change in sound, but we definitely like took a few hard left turns here and there on that record. And some people, I heard that song Becoming the Bull, and I've been a fan ever since. But then I went and listened to all the stuff that came before it, and I was blown away because it didn't sound like Becoming the Bull, or it didn't sound like Falling Down. And I think, most bands or just creative people in general, artists, should take those risks to, change it up a little bit, throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks, what doesn't, no matter how weird or, unexpected it may be. For us as band members and as musicians, that just makes it all a little bit more interesting for us, like I said before, because what was the definition of insanity? It was like doing the same thing
over expecting different results.
Yeah. And it would drive me nuts. I mean, hence the insanity definition. It would drive me nuts to just constantly, if we were just constantly repeating ourselves, like, "Oh, great, okay, and another breakdown, got it, okay, cool, oh, guitar solo, yeah, there, oh, let me guess, good cop, bad cop vocals, okay, yeah, seen it, heard it." Just changing it up just for our own sake is definitely a good thing.
Well, I think that was what was so interesting about seeing kind of at the end of Alex's tenure in the band. You guys did that, like, I think it was like 20th anniversary, like as a band, and then kind of, and I have the set list somewhere. But I can't remember what wall it's on at this point. But I was going to say, like, it was interesting to kind of see songs that, like, you literally had never played ever, because, like, it was a fan voted on set list. So some of, like, the deeper cuts, like, I think you guys ended up doing, like, Five Vicodin, Chase with a Shot of Clarity or something like that, or some of the deeper cuts off of each of these albums. And to me, it was just, like, really interesting to see those in addition to some of the newer material, and that it's, like, it's not as a stark of a sound difference that I would have expected it to be. Like, somehow it's weird that, you know, you can put something that would have been, I guess, obviously not Baptized, but Long Live, you know, you can put something from Long Live or even Lead Sails, and even against some of the deeper cuts from, you know, Death Grip on Yesterday and The Curse, that it's like they still go together. Like, it still works. Like, the dynamics, and, like, they may not be the same. And I think that's the difference, is, like, you can tell the songwriting got better. And so, like, the things that you were doing where it's like, this was a cool part, but you couldn't figure out how to kind of make it for a full song, in my opinion. Like, these little things that I think you got better at doing, where it's like, yeah, we can take that little noise that we're doing here, but we can figure out how to make it throughout. And it's kind of now the melody line throughout the whole song versus just this one weird part at the end, because that's the only place we could figure out where to put it. So it was interesting to kind of see it even in a live setting, to physically hear it, where it's like, oh, I wouldn't imagine the eras of Atreyu necessarily go together as well as I would think they would back to back like that. But like I said, seeing that live show, it was like, oh, I think you guys could dip into some more of the material you have, and it wouldn't be as weird as I think most people would think it would be.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I mean, obviously our musical sound has changed and evolved over the past 20 years. But I do think it's not completely crazy for me to say that, granted, some songs differ from one another, like 100% completely, but you can kind of still tell that it's coming from the same people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, you know, that, I mean, obviously, like I said, our sound has evolved and changed, but it hasn't been like, so it wasn't like the change happened from one week to another. You know, it was very, very gradual. No. And that's why I still think, like, you know, even our later records, you know, our later records don't sound anything like Suicide Notes and Butterfly Kisses, because, you know, we were literally completely different people. You know, that was almost half my life ago. And I still think it's funny that people are still so shocked that whenever we put something new out, they're just so taken aback that, oh my God, it doesn't sound exactly like what they released 20 years ago. What are they doing? Like, dude, like, have you been paying attention? Like, this has been going on for at least the past, 12, 13 years. So, but, the internet's going to internet.
Yes, it does. I mean, I think that's the thing to me. And, I think kind of switching it up just a little bit, but it's like, I think that's the one thing that gets interesting. And like at this point, I would say, yeah, now that Every Time I Die is done, I think you guys are the band I have been seeing the longest at this point, consistently, since right around the end of the Suicide Notes era for me. So it's one of those things where it's like, is it the same band? Is it the same show? No, but it's the same reason that I always, talked about going to see Every Time I Die. And my wife would always be like, how many times do you need to see this fucking band? And it's like, every time they come around, I need to see them because it's fun. I enjoy going. And it's funny because as the years grew on, and I think I kind of have come to the same realization with you guys, that it's like, I get something different out of the live show now than I used to. Before, it was sort of this exercise of aggression, I would say. In the beginning days of like, I have to go pit and I got to do all this, and it's a more active thing. Whereas now I feel like it's more about, I want to go and have a good time because I'm enjoying being at the show. I have a smile on my face. Like, I think anyone who has seen the band, obviously with the lineup change, I think you can all tell that you all are much happier on the show. when you're performing. And the other thing that I think is like a huge thing that I've noticed is like, you know, even having Evan come out and doing like dances with Porter or like different things. And it's like you're incorporating the rest of your crew into it as well. And so it becomes this thing where it's not just tough guy, you know, we're playing breakdowns all the time, whatever. It's like you're there and it feels different and you get something different out of it. And I feel like it's, for lack of a better term, because I definitely would say you guys aren't necessarily more mature now, given some of the things that, you know, you guys do, but it's still a thing where it's like, I think it's something different that, like, you know, you extract from it as the fans going to see you guys. And, you know, I think the biggest thing for me, like I said, is just seeing that, like, genuinely you can tell you all love being up there. Like, you may all have individually may have a rough day, like, because that just happens, but I think by and large, when I see you guys, instead of just like these kind of stoic faces going through the motions, like it sort of seemed like you were the last album cycle, touring cycle, whatever, from my perspective. That it's a thing where it seems like something has been lifted, and I'm not kind of trying to get into that, but it's just, it feels more positive. Everything is more positive. Everything is about having fun and just kind of giving good energy off now. And I feel like if there's anything I can say as an almost 40-year-old now still going to hardcore metal shows and stuff, it's like, that's the kind of thing that I enjoy about going to see these bands. Like, you go see a band like Hatebreed, it's fun. It's still aggressive and they're still like loud as fuck, but it's like the Hatebreed now isn't the Hatebreed from, like, you know, Death is a Satisfaction of Desire. Like, that's not the same band at all. Like, you know, some people might go like, oh, they softened up in their old age, but I'm like, no, they just kind of know what they do and they want to have fun. So like, why not have fun doing it? And to me, I think that's the joy of sticking around long enough with a band and growing with them, is that kind of understanding it doesn't have to be all fucking serious all the time.
Yeah, we kind of made a somewhat conscious decision to just throw away the give a fuck button. We figured, I mean, obviously, some of our shows were very, very intense, very, you know, aggressive, very serious. And there are still points in the show where it is like that, but it's, you know, we figured let's put our actual personalities up on the stage, you know. And I mean, you've hung out with us before. It's like being in the room with a bunch of 5-year-olds. So, you know, let's show the audience that, you know, behind the whole veil of this quote unquote metalcore band is just 5 dudes who laugh at stupid jokes and, you know, try to make each other laugh. You know, sometimes I get asked, you know, on tour, you know, what keeps you sane on tour, you know, from the monotony of it all and the grind and
Donuts.
That very much so. And the fact that I know, you know, no matter how shitty of a day I'm having, whether, you know, getting sick or something's not working out with my gear or there's stuff going on at home that I should be dealing with, I know that at least one time a day, one person in our camp, if not all of them, crew included, are going to have me in stitches laughing. You know, touring, like, you cannot tour without having a sense of humor. Like, you have to be able to laugh at yourself, laugh at each other, laugh at all the shitty situations that you might end up in, like, you know, your van or your bus breaking down. Like, yeah, it sucks, but one day you're gonna look back on it and probably laugh. Like, you know, that was something that we experienced. So yeah, we just figured we'd bring that on stage, and it takes some stress out of it too, you know, performing in front of people, not taking yourself so seriously. I mean, you've seen how we dress. You know, I would never wear that out in public. So yeah, like, we just, like I said, we got rid of the give a fuck button. I mean, not to say that we don't give a fuck, but we're just not putting so much stock into being this serious, intense band, because there are, like I said, there are moments in the set where it's like that, but we're not as people, we're not all that serious, and we're definitely not that intense. We're just 4 or 5 dudes who love to run around like idiots on stage.
Well, I think that was something as I've kind of gotten to know you all more individually over the last couple of years. It's been kind of interesting because like that last time you guys came through here was really interesting because I'm sure he had been drinking before that, but I still thought Porter wasn't drinking, which is fine. So when Southern Hospitality Porter's coming through, hey, let's do this, let's rip shots, let's keep going, and you're like, oh fuck, I wasn't expecting this to happen. So it was like him and I kind of getting.
When Porter's on one, he's on one.
Yeah,
it's not often.
That was no. And that was probably the worst hangover I've had in at least a decade. Was that night, and there was nothing more sobering than watching you guys all climb into your buses and get ready to head to the next place. And I'm like, I gotta get a fucking Uber at 4 o'clock in the morning. But it was interesting because I feel like even in that, you know, and I'll get to a question kind of out of this as well. But it was really interesting because I got to hang out with like you and Kyle, and you and Kyle were kind of more of the quieter ones in the group. But then it's like Kyle then kind of opened up later as the night went on and kind of got to know him a little bit more. I think you were sort of just like, I just want to hang out and it to be quiet now. And, you know, like just kind of dipped away when everyone else started getting rowdy. And then we all kind of went to the Memphis bus. But it's like, I remember at one point sitting with Dan and Brandon, and it was like we were having like a real serious conversation about, you know, 3 dudes being married, been with our women for a while. And it was just kind of one of those where I was like, this in a nutshell, I feel is like what touring would be like, why I wish people could kind of see more of the, like those interactions where it's like, it's the stupid, silly shit of, you know, partying. And yes, it is that, but then it's, you know, tucking away. And for like these 2 or 3 guys are like talking about their marriages and like, you know, why, you know, we love our significant others and like, you know, first dates and stories and stuff like that. And it's everything that runs the gamut in between, in addition to probably just down days where you're like, I fucking hate this. I would love to be somewhere else other than like a studio apartment with like 17 other guys running around, farting and stinking and it's this place up and pissing me off. Like, just get me out of here. And so it's something to see all the different personalities of you all over the last couple of years that I've gotten to kind of know you all more individually. It's something, though, listening to you talk just now, I wonder, was the kind of decision to be a little bit more personable outwardly as individuals, not just represented as a band, was that a little bit of a challenge for you all to come to that conclusion? Because, you know, I can think of the day and ages of like, you know, to go back to like the Curse album cycle, you know, wearing all white, everything's white, strobe lights are white. And it's like, you know, you were very unified in your presentation as a band. And I feel like, you know, obviously that's a big thing is people from a branding perspective. I'm sure your label was like, we need you all to look kind of similar and, you know, all these things, or look as cohesive as a unit as you can be, to where now, you know, looking at you all on stage, it's like you wear suspenders and, you know, H&M pants and stuff like that, that doesn't look like Dan, doesn't look like Porter, doesn't look like, you know, Brandon, that I feel like you all are kind of getting to shine as your own individuals at this point. Like, was that a little bit of a hard process to find the permission or comfortability in yourselves and others to do that?
Not really. I mean, it wasn't, I mean, honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of thought put into it. But yeah, I mean, like that era, which was probably about 15 years ago when we did the whole like all white thing. It was, well, I mean, we had no, if I remember correctly, that was like during our Victory Records days. I mean, they didn't tell us to do that. We just decided, you know, let's do that, but let's have a uniform look, but let's not be in all black like every other band is. Let's go the complete opposite route and just do complete white. And it worked. You know, it was cool. It was different. And then we moved past that, and then, you know, we kind of were just wearing whatever whatever clothes we had on that day on stage. We kind of had that approach. And but yeah, I mean, when it comes to like the presentation of ourselves, we don't really put a ton of thought into it. I mean, there is some thought that goes into it. I mean, obviously you don't want to look like complete garbage if you're doing a photo shoot, or, you know, you're being recorded, or if you're on stage. But, you know, it's just not that, it's not a huge part of the whole thing. You know, it's just a minor part of it. I mean, if I had my way, I'd just be wearing a t-shirt and pants on stage, but, you know, everybody else is kind of, you know, they've got their leather jackets, and, you know, Dan has his headband and, you know, sleeveless leather vest. So
that suspenders.
And I kind of, you know what's one of the dumbest things, the most inconvenient things I could possibly wear? Suspenders. Pants that are way too tight. So I went that route. So, I don't know. Maybe the next tour cycle, we'll all be wearing clown suits. Who knows?
You just got to start wearing mesh shorts. No one in your band does that yet.
I don't think Brandon.
I was going to say, I feel like one of you was actually wearing mesh shorts after the show. I just can't remember who it was. Probably Brandon. Maybe.
Could be
that. I was going to say, that's honestly one of my wife's favorite things, is watching, like, hanging out with somebody and then seeing how they're dressed, and then seeing them get into this, like, ridiculous outfit to play. And you're like, that's not what you were wearing like 40 minutes ago. She loves, like, the pageantry sort of it, and just being like, why don't they just fucking go out in this, like, shorts and sweatpants they were wearing earlier? And I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't look great. I don't know. But I do think it's funny that she trips up over that.
It kind of, I mean, it kind of just depends on the band, really. Like, you know, like Marilyn Manson's not going to go out on stage just wearing t-shirt and jeans, you know. But then look at a band like, I don't know, you know, Unearth. Like, those dudes are in shorts and cut off sleeves. That's it. You know, I don't. I have a very hard time picturing them, like, trying to get all dolled up. So.
I would love to see it, actually.
It is pretty funny.
Because I was gonna say, like, it's. I mean, even you saying that, though, it's funny to think about, like, who was I just thinking of? Who did you say before? Before Unearth, you said, yeah. But I was gonna say, like, to me, I think one of the coolest things that was like a sidestep for a little bit was Rob Zombie, when he did that, like, album cycle where essentially it was just like, I'm like like almost like how he looks normally, just as, like, flared out jeans and, you know, whatever. He didn't do all the makeup and do all the stage show, and it was just like the band came out and played, and I was like, there's something kind of fucking cool about that, like when you buck what you're used to doing. So to me, like, if Manson were to come out and just be like, yeah, I'm just fucking wearing jeans and a t-shirt, I'd be like, kind of here for it. Let me see that.
Yeah, it's always good to throw curveballs here and there, not do the most expected thing every single time. But yeah, I actually do remember that Zombie tour that you were talking about, because I remember seeing a photo. I think it might have been like Ozfest, like 2005.
Something like that, or like a Mayhem or something. Yeah.
Yeah, he just came out in a vintage 70s tee and, like, bell bottoms, and I remember, like, looking at it, kind of being taken aback, because I was, you know, just so used to seeing him with all the makeup and the contacts and the huge jackets and all the spectacle. And I remember thinking that's actually pretty cool that he's just, like, stripped it down and just, like, kind of not trim the fat, but, like, you know, it's just a different vibe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it goes back to, like, just trying new things every once in a while to kind of shake things up a little bit. You know, always makes it interesting to me, anyway.
Kind of speaking to that, I know you and I kind of discussed this a little bit, and I don't want to, you know, I'm not trying to fish for the reasons why this happened, but, you know, so often I think in our conversations as a whole, I think you'll probably pick up on this, but I like trying to unpack how people navigate things in life. Like, how do they, you know, how does something that I think would be hard to navigate, how do you go through it? How do you communicate to people these things and so forth, and kind of come on the other side of this. But obviously, you guys are now essentially a 4-piece as far as, how you're presenting on socials and so forth, with Kyle now being gone. Is it a thing where, having kind of gone through a lineup change somewhat recently, does this make it a little easier to navigate a second time through, or is it still kind of hard to kind of work through all that? Because I feel like it's a little bit of a feeling out process of, trying to find someone that fits the dynamic with all of you as individuals and personality wise. But I just wondered if it was a little bit of a thing where you're like, this sucks, but we've already proven to ourselves we can overcome these obstacles and these hurdles that present themselves when these things happen. It's going to be fine. Like, is it kind of one of those, or is it still a little bit of a struggle to kind of deal with in real time?
If I sit there and dwell on things too long, it's a challenge mentally, which becomes a challenge emotionally. And change is always scary. It's not always easy. It's hard to get used to sometimes. I mean, depending on what the situation is, obviously. But I've noticed, like, for me personally, changes within this band, again, they have been kind of scary or concerning, or, and I think most of that fear comes from the fact that you don't know what's going to happen. But I've kind of found myself, I guess subconsciously, like, there's like a small part of me that also gets excited by these changes, because it's going to be something new. It's going to be something that I'm not used to,
Right.
Again, like, just doing the same thing over and over and over again, it would drive anybody crazy. So, and I think every band that's been around for X amount of years, there's gonna be ups and downs. There's an ebb and flow to being in a band. You have high points, you have low points, you have points in the middle. And I've accepted that. I think, like, I realize that that's just part of what this is. That's, it just comes with the territory. So I can either sit here and dwell on it and let it, I don't know whether it's bumming me out, or if it's eating away at me, or if it's pissing me off, or if it's a good thing, like, I don't want to sit there and be like, oh, everything's awesome. Everything's going to be awesome from now on because of this change. Like, that's just not a very smart way of thinking. So, yeah, I mean, I've kind of just trained myself to look back on things for a reasonably short amount of time and then just move on, because, there's really no sense in just, I guess, living in the past, because you can't get that back. So what's the point of, doing in it or reveling in it? Just move on to the next thing, because, that's what we're here to do, is to thrive and progress and be busy,
Yeah, because it's one of those, and I always feel like I have to put the caveat. This is me saying this. This isn't something that I know from some other way, but it's a thing where sometimes I know, for me, like, having gone through, like, I'll put it in the prism of this show. So for a little bit there, I had a co-host, and I really enjoyed having a co-host, even though they didn't do any of this with me, because they could just never, with the time difference and stuff like that, it was just too hard to have them do interviews with me. But it is a thing where, it made, like, doing the intro outros a lot better, because it wasn't just me trying to figure out what to say or talking about a thing that you're going to hear for the next hour and a half. Like, how do I make it uniquely interesting to me? And when I listen to stuff like, Marin or whatever, it's like, but that's what I like is that 15, 20 minutes where they're like, in the shit for the week of like, oh, my fucking cat's puking on everything. And I don't know, what am I doing with my life? And it's just like the realness of like, well, that's a real life. Like that's, how do you not identify with that? So trying to do that, but it became a thing where when I kind of realized I had to say the hard thing, it's like, hey, I think we should just not do this together. Not because I don't like you anymore, but I think it'll be easier for you to do all the things you need to do. I can kind of do this thing a little bit faster. And it just becomes more of a streamlined process because I know how to do this and what needs to be done. And it's just easy to do it at this point. So it becomes this thing when I kind of look at what you guys are going through from afar, I feel like it could become this thing where, obviously, do you need another drummer to be in your band full time? No, you have Brandon. And, you could do programming drums, so on and so forth, like lots of things you can do. It probably would make the songwriting process a little bit easier when it's just the four of you in a room getting things done. And then, obviously from, again, a business side of things, it's like, is it probably cheaper just to pay someone a flat rate versus, okay, you're a fifth of this and then da-da-da-da-da, like, it just seems like a thing where when you kind of start breaking down these things, it's like, it probably sucks that you lose someone that you've come so close to knowing over the years, but it probably from a lot more other things, it's like, oh, this thing can kind of move at a faster pace now because it's the four of us. We've known each other for all this time. We know how we work well together and we can just streamline the process moving forward. And I know that's a very cold way of kind of looking at it, but I feel like it's something that I think is the reality of these things when you kind of start working and thinking about your relationships in more of a working relationship sense. And that at the end of the day, it is a business and it needs to make money. So it's a thing where I could just kind of see the things of being like, this was a hard personal loss because we like Kyle and so forth. But moving forward, maybe this is a thing where it's us and it just needs to be us moving forward until something different changes. And this is just now what it is. And kind of coming to that conclusion, maybe of realizing that it just needs to be the four of you moving forward for a while.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in any rush to find a permanent drummer as of right now. Like you said, we've been, for the most part, operating as a four-piece for the past better part of a year, so yeah, I mean, there are several silver linings to that too. Like you said, a lot of things get more streamlined. The money isn't, not that there is a ton of it anyway, but the money doesn't get cut up in so many pieces now. But yeah, I mean, and again, like, like these changes that we're going through, I mean, these things, they just happen, I mean, not even in a band situation. I mean, changes just happen in life in general. That's how life works.
Right.
And I think we're now, we're all a bit older and again, I don't want to say more mature, but yeah, I think we just have a better ability to grasp on to that concept, that the fact that, this is just how shit pans out. A lot of it is out of our hands. So it's going to be what it's going to be, and we're just going to move forward.
This is actually, sometimes I'd love to know how my brain just lands on these questions that just come out of nowhere. But I was going to say, like, now Brandon moving out of California, Porter's back overseas. It's just you and Dan essentially out west. Do you find that with everyone kind of moving further away from one another, that it actually has strengthened your communication with one another and enjoying the time that you actually have with one another in person?
I don't know. I don't think it's been long enough to, I mean, Porter has always been bouncing around the globe. Like he was in, like when we first met him, he was in Orange County, California, and then he moved up to LA. Then he went out to Germany for a few years, came back to Alabama. Now he's back in Germany. So he's always kind of just been kind of like living out of a suitcase. And Brandon's only been in Nashville for
not even a year.
Yeah, like not even a year. So I haven't had time to miss the big son of a bitch.
Fair enough. It was just one of those things, like.
But I mean, even though like
just one of those,
we're all scattered now, but we, over the past year, we've been pretty active and busy. So we're still, even though we were scattered, we're still, seeing each other, or at least hearing from each other on a regular basis, like daily basis, really. Whether it's, dealing with the band stuff or, all the things that that encapsulates. So even though we're, some of us are on completely different continents or other parts of the country, we're still very much in touch.
That group chat probably looks really weird at different points of the day.
Oh God, I fucking hate it. Especially because we're all on like different time zones. So I'll be getting like a bombardment of text messages at like 5 a.m, which sucks. So then I have to turn my notifications off on my phone. So then when I wake up, I got to go through all these texts and catch up to everybody. So yeah, in that aspect, it kind of sucks. But other than that, it's been working out okay.
I was going to say, I think one of my favorites was I detest group text messages. I'm in like one for the other podcast I do, and on occasion I fucking hate it. But it's a thing where I think one of my favorite stories recently has been the Better Lovers guys talking about, when they both were on the podcast, they were like, yes, we got the band group text, we got the band with management, we got they have like 4 or 5 different group texts within the band.
Yeah, I think I remember listening to that episode actually.
Yeah, and I was like, that's too much. That's too much. No, thank you. Not at all. Would not want to be in like 5 group texts.
Yeah, and you gotta and then you start, now you're replying to the wrong text chain, and then you got to go dig and find the right one, and then tell everybody, oh, sorry, that was for the other, group chat, and people wonder why I'm so quiet.
Well, I also think it's funny. I was mentioning this to someone recently, and it's such a weird thing, like how people will get hung up on the weirdest things. Like someone was like, "Hey, man, here's my phone number. If you ever want to text me instead of like DMing me on Instagram," and I was like, I'm probably not going to keep your phone number. I'm probably not going to text you. I'm probably just going to do this. And they're like, why? And I was like, I don't know. I've just kind of have learned, like, at times it's just easier to communicate with someone however you communicate with them. So like it's a thing where like you and I DM more than anything. And it's like, okay, that's essentially a text message, if we're being honest. And it's like, so how is it any different than if you were to give me your number and then I text you and then it takes you like a day to reply? Like, it's the same thing. The information's still getting to you. And there's not really anything that makes it more that I need to get a hold of you more quickly half the time. So it's like, that works. And it's funny that some people will try to be like, okay, well, we'll start communicating through a DM, then they'll send me a text message, and then it goes to like something else. And I'm like, just pick one. Don't do it where it's now in a group and a DM and in this other shit. Like, that's so fucking frustrating. Because then when I am, like you just said, looking for something that I need, I have to go, okay, where the fuck was it in this stream of different shit? But I think it's funny that like now everyone almost takes it personally, where it's like, if you don't want my phone number, it's like, it's not that I don't want it. Just if I communicate with you this way, like I already know me, I'm not gonna start a whole new thread on another way of communicating with you just to do that. Like,
I remember, it's funny. I remember when like texting was first becoming a thing. You basically, you write this message and you send it to whoever you need to get it, and then they'll reply back. I was just, at the time, I was like just thinking, like, well, that's so stupid. Why don't you just call the person? And now fast forward however much longer later, to this day and age, like if somebody calls me, like actually, makes a phone call to me, I'm like, who the fuck calls anybody these days? What are you new?
No, I mean, that's me though. Like yesterday, I FaceTime, like it's funny watching like Two Bears, and when Bert goes off on these like aggressive FaceTime rants, I'm like, that's me. But I'm also like, sometimes I would rather just see the person, and I'd rather like, like if it's something humorous, like I want to see the laugh, I want to see the reaction,
right?
Versus just being like, all right, I'll send you this, and then I don't know. But it's like, I guess it's also because I'm still old, and I remember, yes, you can get information to someone a little bit faster in a texting thing, but sometimes it's like what may take like a 15-minute phone call would take forever to have discussed in a text. And to me, it's like sometimes I'm not necessarily the best at, differentiating like which would be better. Sometimes I'm like, I got nothing going on, so I'd rather just call you. That number.
Right. Yeah.
So to me, it's one of those that's the thing. But I always think it's funny when people are like, "Oh, you should. Here's my phone number." I'm like, no, and then I'm just old now, and I don't care about hurting your feelings. I'm like, I'll still just DM you, dude. I'm not saving your phone number.
I think I'm kind of the same way. Mostly because, like you were saying, you get confused as to you remember receiving a message, but was it through a DM or was it through text or was it an email? There's just too many forms of communication these days.
Yeah, you're expected to be on all the time, and it's kind of a bit much. I feel like no one can be on.
I mean, I think like you said, we're just old.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
younger generation has no problem just being on their phone 24/7.
No, that's still. I mean, one of my I have beaten this story ad nauseum on this show for sure, especially when having any of you guys on. But the memory of Brandon getting on that girl when you were on tour with Motionless doing the swapping, and so you weren't headlining. And the Motionless crowd was just not into you guys being there. And this girl was like, my boyfriend said he's going to kill himself. And he goes, so you're still just sitting here?
Oh, yeah. I do remember that. Yeah.
And it was just one of those that it's like I know. And the worst part is like, and God bless Julia, because she's so nice and like loving. But I remember just being like a lot of people, because I was between the barricade and the stage, so I could hear some of the people on the front of the barricade, and they were like, what a fucking asshole, she's going through some shit. And then I want to be like, if you had more life experience, you would be able to deduce very quickly if it was that serious and she really cared, she would have fucking left. She would be on the phone to go deal with that. But like, What were the first things she said? It's my boyfriend back in Indiana. So you're already like 4 or 5 hours of a trip away anyway. So like when you start kind of getting the information out of it, you're like, oh, it's really not that serious. You just didn't want to get called out for not having a good time because you don't like this band. And so it was just funny to see that. But that's technology in a nutshell to me.
Yeah. And I do remember that happening. And I mean, I hope her boyfriend's okay.
Sure.
I hope he's doing better if that was the case. But looking back on it, the whole thing was pretty silly. To get yelled at by a 15-year-old, being scolded by 15. It's not everyday occurrence for me.
No, but it's, I don't know. It's always like the funny moments that happen at shows when you're paying attention, just the weird shit that happens where you're like, oh, okay. I mean, that's like, I think even like one that you probably were never aware of, but I heard when you guys were on that Asking Nothing More run, and then Asking had to drop off, obviously, but was the thing where I remember someone being like, I didn't pay for these two bands, I paid for Asking, blah, 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 blah. And they were just like mad the whole time. And I was like, and then at one point they're like, I can't wait for Asking to come out. I was like, Asking's not on the tour anymore. Like they've been off for like a week. Like they made the announcement. And they're like, so this is all I get is these two fucking bands? And they're like, oh, and I just like ruined their night because they thought like, I'm going to have to sit through this, but at least Asting's going to come out after like this other band I don't like. And then it was just like, no, they're not coming at all, dude.
So he had no idea that it was only
no idea. No, and then he was smashed his shit at that point. But then he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to the box office and demand a refund." And I was like, "I think the time that you would have been able to do that is long gone now, dude."
Yeah. Good luck with that.
But it was just great to like watch them be that upset visibly, to where they're audibly like shitting on both of you and nothing more, and then not realizing it's also like, wouldn't you have looked at a clock and been like, "Oh, nothing more is going on at like 10 o'clock"? Like that's probably means that asking's not going on at all, because the venue's got to be done by like 11. So
yeah, or did you not notice the lack of Asking Alexandria merch anywhere? Like,
no, probably not.
No.
People are very blissfully unaware of so many things. That just makes me laugh quite a bit. Kind of wanted to talk to kind of wrap up, because I gotta go hopefully get a handicap sticker for when my wife drives me around for the next like 6 months. Yeah, that's the only solace that I get to at least get better parking.
Well, I mean, a handicap sticker definitely would serve you well here in Southern California, because parking here is atrocious.
Yeah, I'm interested. My wife bought tickets to go see Juvenile on Sunday, so I'm interested to see how doing ADA stuff at a venue is going to be, because this is the first time I've had to call ahead with an injury and be like, I need like special seating. How does this work? I don't know how this works. Do I call you? Do I have to buy a separate ticket, or like, how does this work now? So that'll be
it's all valid questions.
Yeah, so it'll be my first experience getting to sit with people who aren't able to sit or stand for long periods of time. So that'll be fun. Yeah. But I was gonna say, obviously the new reimagined album is coming out in about 2 months. I feel like there's still a lot of life left on the trilogy EPs that then became, the album. So safe to assume that just lots of touring moving forward for the next year or so, and then surprise musical drops in between as well. Or, I mean, that seems to kind of be the Atreyu way now.
As of right now, the cycle for Beautiful Dark of Life is pretty much done. Okay. We were in Europe pretty much all of June, and then we had from ending of June all the way through July up until now, we had a lot of festival shows, so like a lot of fly out one-off shows. We're actually going in a few weeks to San Juan Islands, which is off the coast of Seattle, to spend a week out there and just write, just to kind of like change of pace, change of scenery, maybe get some kind of inspiration out of that. So that'll be cool.
That 311 sounding record's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Come original. October we have our Curse anniversary show at the House of Blues in Anaheim here in Orange County with 18 Visions and Death by Stereo, which will be a lot of fun. All three bands are playing full album sets, ourselves included, obviously. And then literally the next 2 days after that, we play When We Were Young. So that'll be a lot of fun. But as far as, proper, touring for, a month and a half at a time, it's all kind of up in the air right now. We might have some stuff early 2025. We're doing Shiprocked in January, which will be cool. And possibly at some point going to South America. We're trying to get all that worked out, which will be awesome because we've never been there. So
make sure it says we came to Brazil.
Exactly. When somebody comments on one of my posts, "Come to Brazil," I can legitimately say we are. So yeah, that'll be cool. Definitely looking forward to that. But it's just we're just staying busy with other stuff other than touring. And when it does come time to tour, I think we'll all definitely be kind of champing at the bit to get back out on the road anyway. So it'll all line up pretty nicely.
And then obviously Fake Figures has got some stuff cooking, and any shows or anything on that front?
We're trying to get vocals done. We have a batch of about 5 songs that need to be finished. We actually just met up earlier this week to work on that. And that's a very slow but sure process for us. Because I mean, we don't have any deadlines or timelines to abide by. So we just kind of work on that stuff whenever we can, because everybody else has got, their own lives here in Southern California. So there will be stuff at some point with Fake Figures coming out, hopefully sooner than later. So yeah, just trying to stay grinding.
What game are you playing?
Right now, I've been playing Alone in the Dark.
I don't think I know that one.
It's a remake of an old game from, I believe, like early 90s. It was considered at the time, or now is considered, like ground zero for survival horror. Okay. A lot of, from what I hear, like a lot of Resident Evil was influenced by Alone in the Dark. Anyway, they remade it just this past year, so it's got like, it's the same game but just in a much more modern presentation. They actually got David Harbour from Stranger Things as a playable character and stuff. But like, I'm not a huge horror game fan because I just can't take the tension. I play games to relax, not get stressed out. And this game it's pretty mild on that front, but I'm still find myself like, waiting for something to jump out at me, and like the tension. I hate it. But that's what I've been playing. Definitely looking forward to the new Star Wars Outlaws, which I believe comes out in a few weeks. So once that's
something
out,
like that, I think.
What's that?
I said I think so. I think I just got, when I was looking through my Game Pass stuff, I think I saw that was coming soon.
Yeah, so once that comes out, I'll probably be saying goodbye to the outside world for a little while. So yeah, I just finished Prince of Persia on the Switch, which I was actually pleasantly surprised. I liked that game. I'd never really played any of the like Metroidvania style games before, like the kind of platform. I did want to rage quit a few times, but I've made it through. I'm very proud of myself.
Yeah, I'm about to uninstall Resident Evil 2, the remake, because I was like, I haven't played any of these remakes yet. So like, I'm kind of in that horror survival game mode right now with Alan Wake 2. I'm almost done with that. Really and cool. So it was a thing where it's a great game. Played Resident Evil 2, and I'm so used to it being a side scroller like it used to be that I can't even get past in the second one, like where you're like just in the police station. Like I can't kill the zombies because like my shooting aim is like off, because I'm like, this isn't what I'm used to. And you got to hold like 2 buttons to shoot versus like 1, like to aim and then 1 to fire. It's like, the controls just don't make any sense for how the game used to kind of be. So I'm like, I might just uninstall this. And my nostalgia game will be the Tony Hawk games that I've been going through and replaying.
Well, at least you gave it a try.
Yeah, not much of the college dropout try. Oh, morning class? Not doing that. Where can everyone find you, or anything you would like to plug online as we wrap this up?
Well, yeah, we've got that Pronoia Sessions record coming out, the reimagined version of Atreyu songs, October, would you say 25th?
25th, yep.
25th. So be on the lookout for that. But other than that, you can find me on Instagram, just at Travis Miguel, one word, easy. I'm on Twitter, or X as they call it now, as well. And same thing with Atreyu. Atreyu official is pretty much the handle all across the board, as well as Fake Figures. So if anybody's interested, check it out.
Yeah, I might hit you up to see if you can do me a favor, depending on, I assume you're going to run some re-limited merch designs for the Curse 2 shows. So yes. I might try to be like, if you got some of these, let me know what they are, and I'll PayPal you for one of them, since I can't make it out there.
I will set one aside.
I officially got I officially got declined about a month ago for When We Were Young festival. I was like, oh well, I guess it's a good thing. I wasn't planning on going.
Yeah.
But the Hail Mary shot didn't work.
Yeah, you never know till you try.
I know. I assumed, I was like, with a grain of salt, I assumed the only thing I had going for me is that I'd had a bunch of the bands on previously. So I was like, I mean, I've had everyone on the show, so it shows that I'm on the level to get most of these people. And then I was like, they're not gonna let me come out. But it looks like it'll be a good time. I'm jealous. Maybe next year, when more bands that I know are probably going to be on it, I'll be like, can someone guest list me? I'll buy you something, like dinner one night.
So yeah,
I'm wondering.
I'm wondering with like the whole When We Were Young thing. I mean, there's obviously a shit ton of bands that play it, or have played it thus far, which has been 2 years. So I'm wondering how they're just gonna like keep this thing going without being too repetitive.
I don't know. I look forward to next year when you guys play and get to do a Death Grip on Yesterday in its entirety.
Yeah. I mean, it's a short.
That'd be a great set. I mean, it's like what, 32 minutes or 33 minutes? That'd be a great set.
Yeah, easy peasy. Get in, get out.
Absolutely. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for keeping me busy for an hour and a half post-surgery. This is something I was looking forward to today.
Well, man, I hope you recover soon, and you'll be back up on your feet in no time.
Yeah, I'll bring the donuts next time.
Perfect.
So that was my conversation with Travis. I want to thank him once again for finding time to actually come on and bullshit with me for an hour and a half or so. This was kind of funny. His bass player in Fake Figures actually had reached out for something unrelated, and then was like, hey, if you'd be interested in having Travis on, we in Fake Figures are putting out some new music. And I was like, sure. And then it was trying to make it work before the band went and did like their overseas touring. We just couldn't figure that out. And then it was, let's get it done when Travis gets back home. And what was funny is I knew that they're like, I think the first single for Like a Stone, I think had just come out, the single itself. I don't know if the video had been out yet. So it was like, oh, okay, like there's something we can talk about as far as new music or whatever. But really, this is kind of the sweet spot of like, there's not really anything to promote, so we can kind of just talk about whatever. And that's sort of what the show really is anyway. But it's always kind of fun getting to talk with Travis, because I think now, ironically, because Porter's not super active on socials, so a lot of times I'm just not sure where he is, so I don't want to be a bother and text him and be like, oh, fuck, dude, it's like, midnight, 1 a.m. your time over in Germany, and it's not here. And then just this like weird back and forth. But I think Travis now, ironically, has become the one I almost communicate with the most, and it's probably almost every other day, shooting a DM or something and just bullshitting. So that's really all this really was, is just kind of an extension of that, of, talking about things that I think are funny or amusing or whatever. And honestly, this may not be the episode people really dig, because I didn't talk about I don't know what. But to me, I feel like, Travis is one of those that like I think when you get to know Travis, I think he is a very personable person and very, speaks a lot. But I think if you don't know him, he's probably the one in the band you're like, does this guy ever talk? Does he ever do anything? And I always thought that was kind of the interesting allure of Atreyu, is like, just given how different everyone in the band is, that it's like, you have something like Porter is a very soft-spoken person day to day in his everyday life. But what gets amusing is obviously he's, got a big beard. He's very, loud and not that way on stage. Dan is, shorter than I am. And it's a thing where, I think very much like me, it's like, you've always been called short or little or whatever. So you're loud in other ways. You kind of make up for these things. Brandon obviously is a big ball of energy and a very big presence as well. And then there's Travis, who I've always gravitated toward. I remember seeing the band even before I knew any of the dudes personally. I'd always watch Travis because it was just, I didn't know anything about him. His style was just so different. Dan's got the flashy guitar. Travis has got a very subdued kind of, it's like almost like it was an instrument and I'm just going to work and I'm doing this thing. So it's always interesting just to kind of break down personality types and so forth. And I think as I've gotten to know Travis a lot more, I think he's a lot funnier than a lot of people know. It's just the humor is a little left of center, I would say. But, getting to talk about like his, guitars with him, getting to talk about even them doing like a guitar thing, him and Dan recently, where it was kind of funny watching them try to play their own stuff and play other people's riffs and stuff and kind of flubbing and songs that you've been playing for a long time or, have been writing. And it was just kind of interesting to see because it's like as I've spent a lot of time trying to learn how to play different Atreyu songs over the years, it was always funny that it's like there can be a certain song and I know how the riff goes, but then I'll just fucking flub it randomly. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like I've probably played this song I don't know how many times. Why did I make this simple mistake? Why couldn't I transition from the lead on this song back into the chorus when all it is a fucking open note and then a bar chord? Like, how did I fuck that up? So it's kind of funny getting to see that in someone else that I would consider obviously a professional musician. Getting to talk a little bit more about like personal life things and kind of going ons with the band as a whole. I hope that when you hear like some of these episodes, like with Travis, that it allows you to get to know maybe someone in your favorite band that you don't really know much about. And that's honestly all I really ever hope for with any episode I do with this is that, maybe you just get to know the person that you admire, the thing that they do on a little bit of a deeper level. And it kind of makes you maybe go back and listen to something because of a story you heard on this or another podcast or another interview with this person, and it makes you appreciate the art that they've put out for however long they've been doing it. I know in my time now of getting to know these guys in this band and some of the conversations we've had personally, it's crazy how it has made me re-look at the music I've been listening to from them for a long time. And honestly, kind of coming back to the same thing from the intro, I think that's the interesting thing about this new album, the Pronoia Sessions, is looking at something that is so very distinct and memorable and has like Becoming the Bull. Everyone know, if you're an Atreyu fan, everyone knows that song. Everyone knows how it goes. So to look at a song that might arguably be one of your bigger songs and then going, let's tear it all down. Let's refigure out how to make this. There's something in that I find very fascinating of being like, we constructed something out of nothing and it was a hit. Literally and figuratively, it is a hit. Now, let's deconstruct it, build it back up into something completely different, and does it still somehow maintain that sense of hit? And I can tell you from listening to this new record, it is baffling how they're able to add new melodies, new nuances to these songs that you know inside and out, and they still feel familiar to you, but they sound like brand new songs all over again, and you're able to kind of re-fall in love with a song that you've already been in love with. That's no small feat. I am very, very intrigued by that process. And a little bit of a spoiler, I'm actually talking with Brandon this week as when I'm recording this. So I'm really excited to kind of pick his brain a little bit about the process of deconstructing all of these things and rebuilding from kind of the ground up. All of that said, let's start wrapping up this episode. This kind of running on as it is. If you would like to keep up with Atreyu, it's simple enough. You can just go to AtreyuOfficial.com. That is the landing page for everything. All the pre-orders for the new album are up there. Again, the album's coming out November 8th via Spine Farm Records. The Pronoia Sessions, essentially a stripped-down, reimagined version of some of Atreyu's biggest songs, and a couple covers thrown in there, which if you've seen Atreyu over the years, you know they are no strangers to covers. So it was really cool kind of getting to hear Like a Stone and the Tom Petty cover of Mary Jane's Last Dance. The video was kind of interesting, too, if you haven't checked those out. They've done a good job of adding visuals to the oral medium of the songs. So go check those out if you haven't already. Otherwise, if you'd like to keep up with Atreyu, you can find him on Facebook at Atreyu, Instagram at Atreyu Official, and Twitter at Atreyu Official as well. If you'd like to keep up with Travis, you can find him on Instagram and Twitter at Travis Miguel. Fake Figures should be putting out some more new music. Just keep your eyes posted. Honestly, just keep following Travis. That you'll see all of that. He's been pretty good at posting those things when they are arising. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast, simple enough, Brew Speak Pod on all your major social media platforms. Email me at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. Rate, review, subscribe. You know why that's important. So do such if you can. Keep sharing the episodes. That has been tremendously helpful. It has been wild to see the shares and all of that stuff on the latest episodes over the last month or so, and just seeing the reach of the show social media-wise, at least on Instagram, just massive. Been crazy. Thank you all so much for that. And for the podcast, I want to thank Rockabilia as well for their continued support of our show. Head on over to rockabilia.com. Use our code BREWtally at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. They are whipping out a lot of cool Halloween designs right now with some different bands. I think the newest one they just announced was with the Funeral Portrait yesterday, I think. I think it's at least when I saw it. Other than that, I've been rocking my Atreyu Halloween hoodie from last year that Rockabilia did. So lots of cool stuff going on over there with them. Use our code to check out. Support them for supporting us. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I'll see you all next week, where I have Chris Kelly of Hillhaven. Formerly was a guitar player in Ice Nine Kills for a couple of tours, and a few other bands that you may or may not know, that I may or may not be at liberty to say either. That was a fucking epic chat. You're gonna get two episodes essentially next week. That was a 5-hour conversation, 5.5 hours. Single-handedly might be the longest episode I've ever sat down and recorded in one session, outside of the live stream that Porter and I did on his Twitch channel a few years ago, where that was 6 hours. But I broke this into twos, so you're going to start off with part one. That essentially is just kind of breaking down bullshit conversation, just talking about things in general, life and other funny things and nuances of traveling and so forth. Then the second half, which should come out on Wednesday, I think is when I'm going to put it out, is more focused on the music industry as a whole. Hillhaven, the band he's doing with Ricky from Ice Nine Kills and a few other different people. It's kind of like an all-star band that he put together. But essentially, it's really kind of navigating the music industry and the music space as a new band, some pitfalls you may run into, and just a lot of great advice from a professional touring musician. I'm very excited to get those two parts out. I think the second part is going to do very well, and I think a lot of people, if you are in a band of whatever size or whatever, I think there's a lot to be learned from that. So very much looking forward to getting those two parts out to you. Enjoy the rest of your week. I will talk to you all then.